Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Today we're going to do a live stream focused on Qlik application automation. My name's Adam Cooke, I'm one of the product designers at Qlik. Myself and my colleague Emile, who's one of our solution architects that came from Blender, will walk you through some real-world use cases for automations. So in this session, we will focus on the topic of tax loss harvesting. So we've got some trade data for securities or stocks that we've put into a Google Sheet, and we're going to use an automation to pull that data out of the Google Sheet and store it into a QVD file, and then try and analyze the data inside the QlikSense app. So in doing that in a real world scenario, there's lots of nuances you need to work through to really do that on a practical level. So this session is going to look at it, look at doing that and see some practical debugging steps that we would go through while we're doing that. The second automation we're going to create is one that will pull data out of an API, a pricing API, and again we'll try and store that data into the Qlik catalog and pull that into the same QlikSense application. So, and that data set's coming from an API called AlphaVantage. It's reloaded on a daily basis, or it's refreshed daily. And we have some things to consider with that API. We've got a rate limit of 5 calls per minute, so we might need to use the automation to deal with that. We need to use an API key. And we also need to loop over many API calls to build up the complete data set. So there's some complexity there that you might encounter in any situation where you need to use an API. So yeah, just to summarize what we're going to try and actually do. So the data we've got is stock data. So we've got some kind of key business questions here that we're going to try and analyze and generate some insights from using an automation and a QlikSense app together. So we're going to look at what's the profit and loss of each stock, what's the best performing, what's the worst performing, which are a good candidate for tax loss harvesting, and what are the most volatile stocks. This kind of data set, because it's a live real-time data set, it could be good to do alerting around. So we might use an automation to throw together an alert and maybe a report as well, seeing how far we get. Cool. So just to caveat, this isn't financial advice. This is going to be live with Emile driving the creation of the automations. So be aware we could come across some real world technical challenges, which should be fun. But hopefully the outcome is that you'll learn some new techniques and then you can take it away and apply it with your own data sets. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Emile.
Thank you, Adam. All right. So right now I'm logged into my QCS tenant and I will start building the first automation. I think most of you know that's done by going to add new automation. And then from the template picker, you can choose a template if it's your first time or if you want to start with a pre-configured automation. But of course, for this live build, we will build from scratch. So we'll just use the blank automation. We'll give it a name. The first automation was going to pull data or trade data from Google Sheets. So let's give it a good name. All right. So here we're looking at the automation editor. Here on the left, you have a menu with a lot of blocks you can choose from to build the actual automation. Here in the middle, you will have the automation itself. And then on the right, you'll get a detailed menu for every block that's highlighted inside your automation. Right now, it's the start block. Today, we'll be using pulling data from Google Sheets. So we'll have to search for the Google Sheets connector. This one here, if you click it, new menu appears with all the available blocks. for the Google Sheets connector. In this scenario, we want to get data from Google Sheets, so we want to get the records of our trades. So let's search for that. The block is called Get Data from Sheet. We have two options. The first one will just get the data without the headers, but as you'll see in a bit, our Google Sheet does have headers. You can just build automations by dragging the blocks inside and connecting them to what's already there. And then the first step, whenever you use a new connector, is to create a connection to that connector. In this case, Google Sheets, it's already connected to my account. But if it's the first time you're using it, you would add a new connection, and then an OAuth flow is started between Qlik and Google Sheets. And very easily, you can grant permissions to use it as a new connector. And then like this, I now have two connections to the same account, but this is an option to work with different accounts. And then you can switch between accounts by highlighting them. But for now, let's just use the one, right, like this. Before we get any data from Google Sheets, let's take a look at the sheet itself. So this is the sheet with all our trades. As you can see, we have some headers here. We have some information about stocks with every stock, with the symbol of every stock, the date it was bought or sold, how much it cost, how much we bought or sold, and then whether it was bought or sold. Let's take a look at data itself. We have from columns A through G. So that's 7 columns. And then for rows, we have, let's see, 148. That'll be important in a bit. Because if we go back to the automation, the first step now is to configure the get data block. To specify some information about which sheet we want to use. So we could, the first thing we need to specify is the spreadsheet ID. And we could copy it here from the URL, but way easier is to do the lookup. So if you click this field here, most of the fields, they will have this lookup functionality, which lets you search for all the available values for the account which was connected to the connector. So where the sheet you want to use is US stock trades. The sheet you want to use, well, we can do a lookup again, like this. The first row was row 1, the last row was 148, and the columns were A through G. All right, so now we've configured this block and we can start using it. We have a few options to run this block. We can either do a test run by clicking here, test run, or we can do a run of the full automation. The difference is if your automation becomes longer than a test run, it will only execute the automation until the block for which you selected or for which you click test run. And here the green run button will do a full run of the automation. Let's for now just do a test run. And then here immediately we get the example output of the test run. And this is the data that was retrieved by the Google Sheets block. As you can see, it's a list of objects. And now we somehow want to get these objects or this information of the trades inside Qlik Sense. So the approach to do it is we will transform this list of objects into an inline CSV list. And then we'll do an inline to a CSV list, and then we'll do an inline load in an app that will be created only for this automation. And then it will be deleted afterwards. After in the load script, we've stored the CSV or the table that's created from the CSV to QVD file. So the first step now is to create a CSV. So to do it, I think it's easiest to first create a variable, to use a variable to store it as a string. So we have a block for that. It's called variable block.
And that variable is very different to a Qlik Sense app variable, isn't it? It's its own thing. And it lives in the automation.
This variable, it only lives inside the automation, even only in the run of the automation. It's not possible to share it. It's completely different than a Qlik Sense variable. And you'll see in a bit. So now created a new variable called CSV. It's of type string. and we'll use this to build the actual CSV. And so as you know, the first line of the CSV should be the headers from the Google Sheets. So to do it, here we can just set the value of the variable, and we can say here output from the Google Sheets block. And by just clicking here the input fields, you can start mapping the inputs of, or the fields of certain blocks with the outputs of other blocks. So just like this, you can start mapping it. And here we map the output of this block, the Google Sheets block, to the CSV value. But of course, yeah, we don't want to, the first line, it shouldn't be a list of all the records from Google Sheets. It should only be the keys. So to do that, or the column names, and to do it, we can add a formula, and that formula will be added on top of the output of this block. And the formula we're searching for is called getKeys, and that will just return the keys of an object, in this case, the keys of a list. If we now save it, this will resolve into a list of the keys for from Google Sheets. And yeah, while building, of course, we could build the whole automation in one go, but I think it's best to, yeah, when you're building, to get some feedback from what's actually going on inside the automation and to do it incrementally. And for that, the output block is really useful. Just use it while you're building, and then from time to time, run the automation with the output block, and it will show you after the run, it'll be clear in a bit, what's actually happening inside a variable or what's the outputs from a block. So now we've configured the output block to output a CSV variable. And if we now run the automation, we are here taken to the output of the automation. This is the result of running the automation. And here are a few interesting tabs. In the per block view, you will see the execution of every block inside the automation. You can click these blocks and you can see what's actually happening. And here we see again the outputs and the inputs or the configuration of the Google Sheets block. In the chronological view, you get a similar view, but here the blocks are ordered chronologically. If any errors were thrown,
in order of time, right? So
what did you say?
So that's in order of time series.
Yeah. So the block that was executed first will be at the top here, and the block that was executed last will be at the bottom. Note there is a limit to what's possible to view inside this log. If you have thousands upon thousands of executions, this is not the best way to view the output. And if any errors are thrown, you'll find them here. And then finally, the metric step contains some information on which data.
So if you were wondering why your automation was taking a long time, you might go to that chronological view and you could see, oh, this block has taken 2 minutes for some reason, and that might be.
If you click a block, you can see. You used to be able to see. Maybe it's in the per block view. You used to be able to see how long it took to execute the block.
Do you mind to zoom in your screen now?
Yeah, it's no longer visible. That's annoying. That's a ticket for the.
Figure it out from the start times of the blocks, I suppose.
Yeah, indeed. You could use those. All right. So back to the editor. So now we have our CSV variable here, but if we look at the history of the output block and what was actually outputted, we see, and here, we get an array, but the first line of the CSV, it should actually be a header. So we have to translate this a list of strings, to just one string of comma separated values, which would be the first line with headers. So we have to add an additional formula, and we can add these formulas on top of each other. So you just click add formula on the mapping, and then the formula to turn a list into a string is called implode. This one here. well, the list is already specified, the output of get keys, and the separation character will be comma. Now we save it. Now, sometimes when stacking these formulas, it can be hard to know, yeah, which, as you can see, the get keys formula, it's gone now from this view. And then toggling this one here, toggle formula parsing, this toggle, it allows you to switch between this nice view and then the actual JSON text or the actual pod that's behind it. So, and here you can clearly see it refers to an implode formula, then a get keys formula, and then here you have the mapping to the output of the get data from Sheets with headers block from Google Sheets connector. So that's
And
handy
those,
sometimes to make changes.
those functions are, again, they're very different to the functions that would exist within a Qlik Sense application. They're unique to automations, right?
Yeah, indeed, it's only scope to automations.
So they're not really built for doing ETL type activity. They're more for just mapping and small lookups, right, within JSON.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, you shouldn't use these functions on a list of millions upon millions of records. Then it will time out. But now to do the headers, it's perfect. So if we now run this automation again, and then we see here in the output that we now have a nice string of comma separated values, which is perfect for the header. All right. So now we actually want to start building our CSV file or our CSV data. So the first step would be to now add the records from Google Sheets to the CSV. We could try to fetch them again from Google Sheets, but we won't do it because it would be a redundant call. We'll just use a loop block, which allows us to loop over some lists. And in this case, we'll be looping over the output of the Google Sheets block. And then for every record that we get from Google Sheets, we want to add it to the CSV block. So we could, again, drag a new variable block inside or inside the automation, or we could just right-click the CSV block and then select duplicate block. And this now is just a full copy, also with the mapping of the CSV block. So let's add it in here. Of course, we don't want to get the headers again, so let's delete that. And we want to take the current item, or this will now be executed in a loop, as you can see by the structure. It will be executed for every record returned by Google Sheets. And every item in the loop is a JSON object, and we actually want to convert the JSON object to a CSV line. And luckily for us, there is a formula for that. So again, we can just click the mapping, and we've now mapped it to the current item, the current JSON object. And to transform it, we search for the CSV formula, apply it, and then here we can add a comma as a limiter. Optionally, sometimes if you fetch data from some systems, it happens that one object, or not all objects have all keys. If a key is null, some tools or some APIs, they just won't return the key. So it's possible that some object has 3 keys, some has 4, some has, it can be different across the multiple objects in the same list. And in that case, it's very useful to specify those keys here in the columns parameter, and then the CSV will take it in account when transforming the object. But now we know that all stock traits in our data contain a value, so it's not necessary. Let's just save it. And now, I see here, it says set value of CSV, but of course, we don't want to set a value again because that would override it. What we want to do is to append to the CSV. So we need a different operation. And now we want to get this value here. So you can do 2 things. The easiest one is to just toggle the formula parsing, select this mapping, Control C, and then Control V here. You can remove this one and then toggle the formula parsing again, like this. All right, and if you now run this again, Here you see we have our CSV output, but it doesn't look so good because in here we have our headers, and then immediately the first line is there's no line break after the headers. But for the other lines, the ones that were created with the CSV formula, those have a line break. So that's because the CSV formula adds a line break automatically. But when we hear that the implode, yeah, there was no line break added automatically. Luckily, there also is a formula to add line breaks. Now you could search for it and you'll find it here, line break. But for these easy formulas, if you know them by heart, you could just type them in. So it's a curly bracket, and then this one is just line break. And then if you close it with another curly bracket, it will immediately resolve to the nice visual placeholder. And if you now run the automation again, and here we go with our decent CSV of all our information from Google Sheets. All right. So now the next step would be to create a load script to actually start working or to generate a QVD. And for that, we'll use a new variable to keep things clean. And we'll call this one load script. It's again a string. Save it, select it, and we'll immediately set a value. And it will be something like this. The table is called trades. We do an inline load. Then here we can just specify the CSV variable, which is a string, closing brackets. And then finally, yeah, we want to store this inside a CSV file. So to do that, we have one more command, and I'll cheat a bit and just paste it in to save some time. So what is this last line doing here? It's storing the table into a file, into a QVD file. And what's important here is this first part, live streaming automations : data files. This is referring to a shared space I'm working in at the moment. Side note, automations are not specific to a space, but QVDs can be, and apps can also be specific to a space, which is useful if you're collaborating with other people.
So they'd have to create the space, right, before this.
If you want to do it exactly like this, you should create your own space called live streaming automations. If you want to do it in your personal space, you can leave this highlighted part out. But we'll use the space for now. All right, so now we have the load scripts, and yeah, we have to execute it somehow. We won't execute it in an existing app, so we have to create a new one. For that, we'll use the Qlik Cloud Services connector. We will search for create app block here. Add it to the automation. So yeah, and here we will delete the app eventually. So you can call it demo and make sure if anything goes wrong, people know they can delete it. Better like this. Then the next step will be to set a load script on the app. We also have a block for that. Now here we have to specify the app ID for which app we want to set the load script. And of course, that is the app ID of the app that was just created by the previous block. So like this, we can make the mapping. The load script will just be the load script variable, like this. Now, something you should know is that creating apps, yeah, that happens by just an API call. There is a REST API to create apps, but setting the load script, there's no API call to set the load script. So while this block is using an API call in the background, and you can find it here if you click show endpoint, you see this API call, this API endpoint is used. But for the set load script block, yeah, there is no API endpoint. You can find here is a link to the Kix API that's used and the method that's behind it. But actually, the block itself, it's working within a session. So we need to make sure this load script is available for the reload. So to do that, we need to use the save app block in the Qlik Cloud Services connector, of course. And this block will push the changes to other sessions. Again, we specify the app ID. Once that's done, we can do the reload. Specify, let's be lazy and just copy it like this. So for the reload, there are multiple run modes, but we won't go into detail. In this case, we want to wait for the reload to complete. And then once the reload is completed, we want to delete the app again. All right, and let's paste it in here. Toggle the formula parsing on again. All right, so let's run through this automation. We get the data from Google Sheets. We then generate the CSV. We'll use that CSV inside a load script. We'll then create a temporary app. We'll set the load script on the app. We will reload it, and then we will delete the app again once the reload is finished. So let's try to do that. Here, it will take a few seconds. When an automation is running, you can already see some progress inside the chronological view, but not in the per block view. In the meantime, let me open the tenant. So once this is finished, you can see the actual created CSV file. I hope the QVD file. I hope you'll be able to see it. So I was creating it in a shared space. This one. So nothing yet. Still running. I hope it's not stuck. Well, the reload is taking some time.
So the catalog can have all sorts of data types in it, can't it? It can have apps, can have data.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. So here are different types of objects that can be inside of the catalog. Now I think it's hanging on the load scripts on the reload here, as we can see, and I think it's caused because the app I created, the temporary app here, it wasn't in the shared space, and that's probably why it's causing this error, or why it's taking so long. So let's try to create an app in the shared space. We can also do a lookup for the space, very easy. And live streaming automations, you can search inside the lookup. Like this, we can map it. If you toggle the formula parsing, you'll see the actual space ID. And if you now execute it again, and we take a look here, here we see the app is created. Here we go. The QVD is also created, and then the app is deleted again. Perfect. All right, and if you take a look at the QVD file, profile data, does it contain some actual good data? Yeah, looks good. So we have 26 different stocks.
Someone likes Tesla.
Yeah. And here we get an example of the data inside the QVD. Great. All right. So now we can start using this QVD. It's now in Qlik Sense, and we can start using it in our apps. All right. So now the next automation we will be building is an automation to get the stock information. So now we have the trades information in QCS, but we still need to know the actual stock prices to act with the stocks we have, and to decide whether to buy more or to sell stocks. So for that, we will be creating a new automation. So let's go back to the tenant.
So I suppose the way people might have tried to do this before Qlik application automation would have been to use the REST connector in a fairly advanced load script.
Yeah.
But this one's going to do it without any script, really.
Yeah, indeed. You could have done this before with just writing your own manual scripts. what Qlik application automation is doing. It's just some kind of interface to work with APIs. So you can do this all by yourself if you have the time. You can build you can write the scripts and build integrations to all these APIs. But the great advantage of automations is that we've done all that work, we've implemented these APIs, and you can just pick the blocks and build it. As you can see, in a matter of a few minutes, you've built your script. You can change it. Everyone can read it. It's easy to understand.
And inside the Qlik Cloud Services connector, there's pretty much blocks for anything you can think of, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot of functionality, as you can see here. We even have a few blocks. If you're missing something, we here have these raw API blocks, and you can use them to just make any API call for services that we don't support with these fully integrated blocks like we have for apps, for spaces, for users. There's a lot of functionality. But all right, back to automation. We want to get some data from our stock data, and for that we're going to use the Alpha Vantage API. It's an API that gives you stock information. In this project, we'll be using the daily API or the time series daily API, which returns some stock information. You'll see in a bit what it's returning. That's something with automations. We don't have an Alpha Vantage API. If you would search for it, you wouldn't find it. But we do have a call URL block. And this block allows you to make API calls to anywhere. So in here, you just need to specify the URL of the API you want to reach. You can choose a method the method you want to use. You can add parameters. You can even add headers. There's a lot of functionality in here. And so this is a good alternative when some functionality or some API is not available in automations, which is the case for this Alpha Vantage API. So if you take a look at this API, we see a function is required, and for this one it will be time series daily. It's actually which API you want to use. The symbol of the stock you want to retrieve information from. So for every stock, we need to do an API call. You can specify the output size. We'll just ignore that one. The data type, it's an interesting one. You can choose between JSON or CSV. Usually in automations, you'd want to use JSON because everything inside an automation is in JSON. But now we're building a CSV, so let's just choose CSV and try to reuse it from Alpha Vantage. And then finally, you need to specify an API key. So if you go back to the automation, we can start building that here inside the call URL block. So we first need to enter the URL like this. We want to do a GET request, and then for parameters, the first one was function, which is time series daily, and then we can keep adding additional parameters. When you're doing a GET request, these parameters, they are transformed to query parameters, and when you're doing a POST request, it's transformed to body parameters. For now, the symbol, we need to do it for every symbol in our Google Sheets file. For every trade we did, we want to get the stock information. But for now, let's just do one with IBM hard-coded to see what kind of data we retrieve from Alpha Vantage. So symbol, and then the data type, which is CSV, and then the API key. I'm gonna type in our API key. Please don't steal it. It's very easy to get your personal API key from Alpha Vantage. It's free, and that's enough marketing for them. All right, if you now run this, you'll see here the outputs, and we get a nice CSV file for IBM, for the IBM stock, with the timestamp, some prices, information. But what's missing here, and what we will need inside QCS, is the symbol. The eventual QVT we'll be building will need a symbol. But let's start with translating this. Let's start with creating the load script. All right, so we need to do this API call for every stock inside Google Sheets. So let's again get that block. I will be going a little bit faster now since we've already done this.
So, Emile, what would you do if you didn't know how many rows you were going to have in the Google?
Well, I think you can just here type a very big number in here, and if you then execute it, let's see what happens. Yeah, it's a little bit smarter, but not smart enough. As you can see, the last row here. Oh, and this is interesting. When you're looking at the output of a block, you can here toggle the view mode, and then you can switch between this nice visual list scroller, and you can search in it, and it's really cool. But you can also just see the raw JSON behind it. In this case, it's an array of objects, and here we see we have some empty objects. So you could just here add a very big number, but then afterwards you would need to do some filtering to remove all the empty objects or empty arrays from the list that's returned. But for now, luckily we know that it's 148. All right. So as you can see, this here, it returns this one at Google Sheets. It returns our trade data, and we want to get all the stock information for all the unique stocks. But if you would just execute this one in here, it would be executed way too many times because multiple stocks appear multiple times in our Google Sheets file. If you take a look, or as we've seen earlier in Qlik Sense, the Tesla stock is a very popular one. So we need to find a way to deduplicate these symbols of the stocks. Luckily, we have the duplicate block. Can't be any easier. Just drag it in. The list we want to deduplicate, it's not actually the full list from Google Sheets. We could do it, but there's an easier way. So let's remove this mapping and add our own mapping. From the output of Google Sheets, we actually want to get we only want to do this on symbols. So if you have a list of JSON objects and you only want to use the one key of every object, the trick is so just from any object here in this list, select, just click on it, click on a key you want to use or you want to get the list from, and then you're prompted with a menu that allows you to just take the first one. So this would take the first symbol from the first, or the symbol from the first object in this list, or you could choose to get a list of all the symbols that are returned by Google Sheets, or you could add a query to find a specific symbol, or you could only search for Tesla, but in this case, we want to get all the symbols. And as you can see here, it is the preview of the result, and it results into all the symbols. And we have some duplicates still. But luckily, we have the deduplicate block. And if we execute this, we get here only 26 unique symbols. Perfect. All right. So now we can start building our CSV file. So we'll again use a variable. Oh, let's first add it to the end. So the first row of the variable should be the headers from Alpha Vantage and the symbol. So we could do some black magic stuff to get it outside of the string here, but it's static. It won't change. So just make it easy to ourselves and copy it from here, like this. Paste it here. Oh no, not here. Paste it here. Set value. The first line will be the header. Now we also want to add the symbol. And we all recall that we have to add the line break manually because it's just a line. All right. So then
I've just seen the comments, by the way. We can see them. Just to point that out.
Oh, you can see the comments.
Yeah, I've just noticed the message. It was from 10 minutes ago, so should be
Okay.
watching.
All right. Yeah, I'm looking at my notes, so I have no view of the comments. I'm trusting you. All right. So now we're building the CSV file. So we've add the headers manually to spare ourselves some work and pain. And now we want to get these. Yeah, we want to get these stock information with the call URL block for every different symbol in the deduplicate list. So we'll probably have to execute this one in here. And then let's add the CSV block here in between. So we first declare the headers, and then we can start adding the information. So we want to use this block again. Let's just duplicate it, right? Drag it in here. So by the way, as Adam said earlier, there are some very strict rate limitations on the Alpha Vantage API. So yeah, we want to not use it too much. So then when you're developing with these kinds of APIs, or if you're expecting a lot of data, it's actually very interesting, or a tip to reduce the maximum number of items that are retrieved, and then you'll only work with that amount of items. So in here, let's limit the traits we want to get from whole sheets to 3 for now. Later on, we will remove this restriction, but for developing, yeah, this block will work a lot faster because it has to fetch less data. And then the other blocks, yeah, the Alpha Vantage API, for example, it will be called a lot less. All right. So here, the symbol, it no longer needs to be hard-coded. So we can now use a symbol from this list. So we can just map it like this, item straightforward. And then here we want to start adding this information to the CSV file. But if we look at the output, oh, we have none for now. Well, as you recall, the first line from the response of Alpha Vantage were the headers. So now we have to find a way to remove those headers. I think the easiest way to do it is to transform the output from Alpha Vantage to a list, ignore the first item, and then add all the subsequent items as a string to the CSV file, a CSV variable. So to do that, we can use a loop block, add it between. We want to loop not over the duplicate list, but we want to loop over the output from a call URL block, like this one, but we want to ignore the first line. Currently, the output of the call URL block, it's still a string. So we want to transform this into a list. For that one, we can use the explode formula, which converts text to a list. And the delimiter character is a line break. Like this, save it. So this is now a list, and this will loop over the list, the loop block. We want to ignore the first item. The easiest way to do that, I think, is to use a condition block. The condition block, that's very similar to an if-else statement. So let's just drag this inside here. And we want to say if the item in the loop, actually the index of the item in the loop, to get an index of the item, and so 0, 1, 2, and so on. There's not really an easy or straightforward way to do it inside just by clicking or by mapping. But what you can do is if you toggle the formula parser, you can here replace item by index. So it's name of the list that you're looping over, dot index, and that'll give you the current index that you're in the loop. When that equals 0, that means we are working with the first item, and then we actually just want to ignore it. So when it equals 0, we won't do anything, and when it equals something else, we want to add it to the CSV file. All right, so then the value we want to add here is the item in the loop, which will be, let's toggle this again, which will be just a string. So let's save this. Let's add an output block so we can see what's inside the CSV file. Like this, and let's run it. And here we're seeing only one. Yeah, probably it was still set to setting the value instead of appending. That's not what we want. Right, like this. And let's run it again. Here we go. So we have our information, but we're missing a symbol. Of course, yeah, we didn't add it. And looks like the no line breaks, just one body of text. So yeah, of course, here we need to add the symbol, which is the item in the deduplicate list. Let's add it like this, and then finally also a line break. All right. So if we execute it again now, here we go. This is looking way better. Here we have the actual CSV output. Nice. All right. Yeah, one more thing. So now we're doing this only with 3 traits from Google Sheets. But if you want to do this for real, let's already remove this. We're going to do it for 26 different stocks. So we will for sure hit the rate limiting of alpha vantage. To make sure we don't hit the rate limiting, we can add a sleep block, and this will hold or pause the automation for an amount of seconds. So it's 5 every minute. So just take 15 seconds to be certain that we don't hit anything. We can save it, and now this will generate the full CSV. And then in a similar way, we can build our load scripts. Of course, I won't drag all these blocks in again. I'll just copy them from our previous automation. So let's go back. And to copy blocks between automations, it's actually very, very easy to do. If I can find my automation. All right, perfect. I get traits from Google Sheets. That's the one. So if you want to, so there are 2 ways to transport automations or to share automations manually. The first one, if you just want to export the full automation, right-click on the blank canvas and then select Download Workspace. This will generate a JSON file, and then you can upload it in another canvas to have that automation in there. Be aware it will override the full automation. But in this case, we only want to get the load script and yeah, these Qlik Cloud Services blocks. So we just right-click the first block, and then we can select Copy Block with Attach Blocks. This will copy all the blocks starting from this one until and going down all the connected blocks. So let's do that, and copies it just to the clipboard. And we go back to our automation, and then here we can choose base blocks. Here we go. Then we have to make a few changes. Yeah, this will be called stocks, like this. Right, and this can all stay the same. Set the load script, save the app, do the reload, delete the app again. And yeah, maybe for the sake of the demo, because otherwise it will take a lot of time. If you have the sleep block for 26 different stocks, let's just again limit it to 4 records. Execute the automation. It will still take some time. Here we can see how it's going. And then if we don't filter our automations, we go to the space. This will take a bit longer, but it'll be worth it.
So now we've got those 2 data sets. I suppose we're in a position to start either building a ClickSense app or potentially building some automations to do with creating price alerts or creating a PDF report.
Indeed. So this is only the first step. I mean, the first step we now have, or at least we have 1 QVB, and we can now add these to a ClickSense app. For this demo, let's create a new one. Right. And then inside the load script of an app, you can then specify the QVD files you want to load inside that app. So let's go to the load editor. Here we can select from the data files of the space. And then here, oh, we see the stocks is also generated. So let's import the traits. Insert the script. And then let's also go for the stocks. Hopefully those came true. Oh, yeah, they look good.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, and now we can execute the load script. And as you can see, now this information is fetched inside the application.
I wonder what insights it would come up with automatically.
Yeah, I think that the symbol field will be, if we, synchronize. Yeah, here we go. So on symbol, we have the link, but of course it's limited because we only have, in the stocks data, we only have records for four different stocks. Yeah, it would be like this. All right. I think that's the demo for now. Next time, we'll go one step further, and we will have this full app that you can use to start analyzing this data, and we'll also show how you can then leverage automations to take the next step and to really take action with this data, to send alerts, to send reports, and to maybe make some decisions in different systems, depending on your data you have in your app.
Great. Thanks for joining. Hopefully see you next time.